Good morning, everybody. I'm Dwight Moody. Welcome to Sunday in the House. This morning on a cold, overcast, rainy day here in South Carolina, I have a little help, a little hope, a little humor as we gather here to encourage one another in these consequential times in which we live. You may be living in the middle of a snowstorm. As the storms have swept across America, it stormed here, it seemed like all night last night, but it just left rain. It's flooded in the mountains. It's filled up the Northeast with snow. I've got some coffee. I hope you have something to drink and you're comfortable where you are. I want to welcome you to the show today. I want to encourage you to register your presence right down in the Facebook Live comments or send me a message or an email. I've been getting texts and messages every day this week from people who watch the broadcast. Sometimes they watch it live, and sometimes, as perhaps you do, you watch it during the week. It is archived both on Facebook, for 3 or 4 weeks, but it's also on my website at themeetinghouse.net, as well as all of the back programs. This is still February, and this is Black History Month. And even if the federal government is going to forget about that, we are not. And I want to tell a story. I want to go back to last week's story. You remember last week I told you about an event in January of 2015. This was the National Festival of Young Preachers, which I helped organize and lead. We were having an event for about 125 or 30 young preachers at the Methodist Church in Dallas, Texas. And if you remember, for the communion service, as everybody knelt down at the rails and took communion, a young black man by the name of Nathaniel Thompson stood up to speak. Now, I didn't say last week everything I intended to say. People wrote me and asked him about him. He was not one of our preachers, our young preachers. He was a graduate student at the University of Kentucky in vocal performance. He was a student of the great Everett McCorvey, and he was part of the vocal ensemble that would sing every year at our national festivals. It's called the American Spiritual Ensemble. And they travel all over the country, all over the world, singing the American spiritual music. But Dr. Everett McCorvey, who founded that organization and leads it, I count a good friend, is also the director of the opera program at the University of Kentucky. Now, I have never been in the opera world. I have kind of stood on the outskirts and watched him and watched his students. But this happened to me this week. My grandson is 16 years old, and he lives up in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a little over a 2-hour drive. He sent me a text this week, and this is what he said. Pawpaw, want to pick me up this Thursday or Friday? We can do what we did last time. Well, it's hard for a grandfather to not have your heart warmed when your 16-year-old grandson gives you that kind of invitation. 2 weeks ago, I had picked him up. I'd driven the 2 hours, picked him up. We had dinner together. He took me to his place of work and then to his bookstore. And then I drove home. This week, I drove over to Charlotte from the Greenville, South Carolina area, and we decided to go to the Charlotte History Museum. I'd never been there, neither had he. It's on the east side of Charlotte. We went in. It's not the most impressive museum I've ever been in. We went through 3 displays until we got to the last one, which was a display of the National Negro Opera Company. And I thought, well, this is great. And what it told the story of the National Negro Opera Company was founded by a woman named Mary Dawson from Charlotte, North Carolina, back in the 30s or 40s. I can't remember all the details. One of the pictures, one of the displays they had showed an old house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, this caught my attention because I lived in Pittsburgh for 9 years, pastored a church there, got very connected to the community and to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This house was the national headquarters of the National Negro Opera Company, and that connected it with me. It was a wonderful experience. We took some great pictures, some of which you've seen on your screen this morning. That's my story for today about my connection with part of the history, black history in the United States. Now I want to respond to 3 people who wrote me this week. The first one, a person sent me a video by messenger. This came from North Carolina. It was a montage of a woman, Paula White Kane, who is a Pentecostal preacher with a very checkered background from Florida. She's been named by the new president as the leader of his faith outreach initiative. And I did watch the video, and it showed her saying things like Black Lives Matter is Antichrist, and to be against Donald Trump is to be against God, and to identify her new ministry as to push back against all the persecution of Christians in the United States. It was all I could do to keep from laughing about all of that, as if Christians in the United States are persecuted anywhere. I mean, makes a mockery of real persecution around the world. But I watched that video. And then number 2, last week, just as we finished, I'm telling you, not 30 seconds after we finished the program, my phone rang. And it was my daughter calling me, euphoric about the program last week, because as most of you know, we, for the first time, had real cameras and a real videographer and a real technician, and it looked good. But she was thrilled with something that I had said. I gave last week a list of 10 things that would give me hope. And one of those 10 things was to focus on what we call red letter religion, or a red letter Bible. I brought my red letter Bible with me today. And to focus on red letter revivals. That is, we need in America a revival of red letter religion. She thought that was a great idea, and she encouraged me to change something that I've been planning to do this fall, which I call the Tangle Tour. And she said, why don't you call it the Red Letter Revival? I've been thinking about that all week. Some of you know about the Tangle Tour. 2 years ago, I took the Meeting House. This is my program of interviews and music and art. I took it on the road to 7 venues in 4 states. We had a great time, and I learned a lot, met a lot of people, and I've planned another one for this fall, going up to D.C., New York, New Hampshire, and then Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So she called me and said, why don't you call it the Red Letter Revival? Well, I think it's a great idea. I'm going to incorporate that in my plans. Sometimes I joke with a friend that if we had a tent, we could set up a tent and just do tent revival meetings. I would like that. I went to those when I was a kid. Number 3, I got a message from Texas. Somebody who's a real skeptic, has trouble with most of what Christianity teaches, not so much in how to live, but what to think and how to believe. And he wrote me and said, I wish you would explain Luke chapter 16. Luke chapter 16. So I thought, well, that's not a bad thing. I'll just take it as a red letter lesson for today. And I want to read this story, and then I want to make some comments on it. He had trouble with it, as many people do, because it gives a picture of the life after death as one of torment, flames, and all that, eternal flames in hell. I want to read this story to you. And I'm reading it out of another red letter Bible. This is the New International Version. But I'm going to read it, make some comments on it, and then give an interpretation of it and connect it to something that's happened over the last couple of weeks. So stay with me here. There was a rich man, and we've been following two very rich men in the public eye over these last 3 or 4 weeks, haven't we? It's coming right out of the Bible. What's happening today is coming right out of this story. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. At his gate, or at his door we might say, there was a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. Now, there are many people like this around the world, some in the United States, some in impoverished countries around the world. And Americans are very generous people, and through our nonprofits and NGOs, and even through the federal government, we have been providing help, scraps off of our tables, so to speak, for poor people around the world. Medicine to tend their sores, food to put on the table, water, digging wells to give them water that's free of bacteria and disease, and even teachers to teach them to read and write. So this story of Jesus describes the world in which we live. The time came when the beggar died, and mortality rates around the world among the poor, early death is very high, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The old text says Abraham's bosom, and there's a song we sing about that. The rich man also died, and that reminds us that all of us are going to die. Taxes and death are the two things we can be sure of. And he was buried in Hades. That's the word here in the English. That is the Greek word. I have my Greek Bible right here. I looked it up last night. Hades is the place of the dead. It's not necessarily a place of torment, but Hades is the place of the dead. It is a Greek word. In Hades, where he was in torment, the rich man looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. Now, you know, this is a story meant to teach us something about life today. It's not meant to be taken literally. I don't necessarily think that people who are dead and in the place of the dead can look across a great expanse of space and see Abraham and see people up there. This story is not meant to give us a literal picture of either heaven or hell. So the rich man called out to Abraham, "Father Abraham," that's the title of the song I mentioned, "have pity on me and send Lazarus to dip his tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in the fire." Now, I don't think this is a realistic picture of what's going to happen to any of us when we die, as if people in heaven can get a cup of water and take it down to the place of dead and let the dead dip their finger in it. No, that's not what this is trying to teach us, what life after death is going to be. But Abraham replied, "Son, remember that in your lifetime you received good things, while Lazarus, the poor man, received bad things, poverty and starvation and thirst and nakedness. But now he is comforted and you are in agony. Besides all this, between us and you is a great chasm has been put in place. So those who want to go from here, that is the place of comfort and rest, to you, a place of torment, cannot. Nor can anyone cross over from where you are to where we are. Even Jesus said in this parable that taking this literally of going back and forth is not what he intends. So the man in the place of torment said, "Okay, I beg you then, Father Abraham, send Lazarus to my family still alive. I've got 5 brothers. Let Lazarus warn them so they will not come to this place of torment." But Abraham replied, they've got Moses the prophet. They've got all the Hebrew prophets. Listen to the prophets. "No, Father Abraham," the rich man in hell said, "but if someone were to come back from the dead and talk to them, they will repent." But Father Abraham said to him, "They don't listen to Moses. They don't listen to the prophets. They're not going to listen to somebody even if they came back from the dead." Now, the question I have today is this. Is this about a literal heaven and a literal hell? Is this trying to teach us about what heaven is like or what the place of the dead is like? Or is this trying to teach us about being generous in this life? Is this a story about the life to come or the story about life as we know it right here? The point of this story, and it's consistent with all of Jesus' teaching, is that we must be generous with what we have. We must have compassion on people who have less than we have. We must be kind to those who are the stranger, those who are naked, those who are thirsty, those who are hungry, those who are in prison, those who are sick. Those were the 6 categories that Jesus mentioned in his famous story of the judgment day. The purpose of the gospel, the purpose of this story, is not to saddle us with some ugly concept of eternal punishment for people who don't know Jesus. No, it's a call for us to heed the prophets in the Bible that we read, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And it's a call for all of us to live like Jesus, to be kind and compassionate and to receive people, to see people who are on the margins, to give them clean water and something to drink and something to eat, and share the bounty that we had. This is the prophetic word that Jesus had, not to belabor us with some kind of speculation about who's going to suffer after death. Now, you know, here is the strange thing about this parable that I've tried to hint at as I've talked about it today. This is a red letter lesson for all of us. It is and what we have seen by our own government, the rich man, Elon Musk, holding hands with the rich man, Donald J. Trump, not distributing their wealth to the people who need it. No. What they have done is spent these first 4 weeks disrupting the small streams of help that have been flowing out of America to the far corners of the world to help the poor and the diseased and the lonely people. I'm referring, of course, to the U.S. aid program. Now, I don't think Musk and Trump knew squat about what that organization did. They just knew that it was taking billions of dollars of our tax money and sending it around the world. But what it was doing, of course, is exactly what Jesus called upon all of us to do in this very text that I read today. To take the scraps off of our own table, and more than scraps, and send them and give them and serve them to the people who need it. Medicine to heal their diseases. Houses to shelter them from the elements. And food to assuage their hunger. But what we see and have seen over the last Jesus wouldn't even need to create a story like he did, the one I read out of Luke. All he would have to do is describe what Elon Musk has done. There was a rich man who did not share. But then he found somebody who was sharing and was generous and was kind. And he came in there and disrupted the whole operation. If this is not exactly what Jesus was talking about, that the judgment of God is upon people like Elon Musk, who try to disrupt even the small streams of health and wellness and well-being that we try to give to people around the world. You know, the odd thing about this is this text in Luke, as I was literally had this little red letter Bible open, and I actually had my Greek Bible open to check some of the words. I received an email from a friend of mine in New Hampshire, somebody who's watching today, Marshall Davis. Marshall Davis publishes weekly and sometimes more a commentary on Substack, and I want to recommend it to you. Spiritual Reflections by Marshall Davis on Substack. You should go and subscribe to it. He wrote this week about this very parable that Jesus told. Here I was reading my Bible about it, actually discussing it with my wife, and I received this email from this listener up in New Hampshire, providing his very commentary on this text that I was studying about. I thought, how providential. I read through his column 2 or 3 times. Most of what I've said here today, I took from his column. I want to thank you, Marshall. Keep writing. I hope some of the rest of you will subscribe to his column. Now, I want to thank you again for joining us today. This is my effort, my small effort, to connect with people who've given up on church, for whom all the doctrines and hypocrisies in church life are too much. And maybe you count yourself in that group. Now, I've been a churchman all my life, but I'll tell you there are a lot of disgusting things that happen in Christian communities. And a lot of times I've wanted to quit. And I have quit a time or two and tried to move on. But I have launched this ministry on Monday morning to connect with you, to focus on the words of Jesus and to be a red letter Christian. You know, there is a website, Red Letter Christian. There is a Facebook site, Red Letter Christian. You can go to both of those and get a lot more of what I am trying to put out there today. But I want to thank you for tuning in today. I encourage you to reach out to somebody who you know that's quit church and who's disgusted with what they've been taught that, quote, Christians believe or what Christians do. Anytime I encounter somebody like that, I try to push aside all the junk that Christian people do and focus on Jesus and say, let's just try to understand the life that Jesus lived, the life that he has called us to live, and how we can do that today and tomorrow. Now, of course, in our day, as you've seen, What this means also is pushing back against another version of Christianity, what we call MAGA religion, M-A-G-A, Make America Great Again. That religion, which is led by people, Paula White Cain, that I referred to early in the program. Theirs is a version of Christianity I do not recognize, and I'm going to point out this to you. Paula and people like her, when they're talking about MAGA religion, rarely, if ever, mention the name of Jesus. They never take you to the red letters of Jesus and say, well, I'm reading Jesus, and Jesus meant us to be this way. That is, shut down USA, demonize the immigrants, demonize the transgender, demonize the poor as sapping the wealth of our country. No, you won't find any of that in the teaching of Jesus, which is why MAGA Christians can never quote Jesus. Their books do not quote Jesus. Their articles do not refer to Jesus. You stick with the red letters of Jesus primarily, and it will take you to true spirituality. I want to encourage you to not only reach out to somebody, but to post on Facebook. Let us know where you are. I keep track of this. My long-term ambition is to have people from all 50 states, at least one person in every state, to tag in and watch, comment, send me a question, send me a video, send me a correction. Maybe I've said something wrong today. But next week, I'll pick out 2 or 3 things that I have heard from you, and I will comment on them. I will correct something I've said that was wrong. I will interpret something that you are confused about. I will use an illustration that you send to me on this program. You can go to my website at themeetinghouse.net and subscribe to my weekly newsletter. It goes to about 1,000 people. We'd like to add you to it. Comes out generally on Thursday. You can donate. You know, back in 2020, when I was 70 years old, I started an effort to identify and secure 70 donors in honor of my 70th birthday. We got up to 39, but I've decided to extend that in honor of my 75th birthday coming up next month. And if you would like to be a donor to this ministry, to this message, to this broadcast, you can go to the website at themeetinghouse.net/support, and it'll give you instructions about how you can send in a check or give online. 3 people did that this week, and I thank you for it. My goal is, by the time of my birthday, the 30th of March, I will have reached that 75 donors. We've got 45 now, so there are 30 of you who may need to send in a donation of some sort. Thank you for watching and listening and responding and thinking, praying, reading today. Let me hear from you. I care what you think. I care what you say. I care what you write. I read it. I take it seriously, as you have found out today. You can refer this, tag your friends on this broadcast on Facebook. People watch it all through the week. You can as well. Send it to somebody for whom it would be good. Thank you. I hope the sun comes out today where you are. I hope you can dig out of the snow or paddle your way out of the flood. I hope you can be a blessing, full of compassion and care and generosity to somebody you know today. And in that way, you can be a red-letter Christian. I am Dr. Dwight A. Moody, and this has been Sunday in the House. God bless you.